Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us in this crucial discussion panel about enhancing transparency and sustainability in supply chains. Today, together with Andre, Toy, Osa, and Valerie, we are going to explore how blockchain technology is going to create a more transparent system in which we can avoid fraudulent activities and negative aspects. So transparency is a very important topic in supply chains, and today we're going to explore it together. My name is Mahsa Dorfard. I am the Sales and Marketing Manager of Coinix, which is a blockchain investment firm based in Hamburg. And now I'm going to ask our speakers to shortly introduce themselves.
Okay. Hello, everyone. And hello to all the online viewers as well. My name is Tui. I'm a research associate at the Fraunhofer Institute for Material Flow and Logistics. The Fraunhofer IML is part of a research network of 76 institutes, and we do applied research. So we are trying to think about how breakthrough innovations can be turned into useful business models and make an impact on society. I'm bringing insights on my two projects, Trusty Food, which is an European research project about how will the future of sustainable food supply chains look like. And another project I'm currently working on is Forest Guard, which is about blockchain-based solutions for compliance to the European deforestation regulation. Thank you.
Hello, my name is, you can hear me, Valérie Raffa. I work for Zengate Global. Maybe some of you know the founder. His name is Daniel Friedman. He used to work with the Charles Hoskins, IOG. Just quickly on my background, I worked for a political organization like the European Commission, and it will have an impact later on. I worked in Croatia as a guest lecturer at on the European Union, so I've been to Montenegro in a concert of Rolling Stones, so that was great. So coming back from a very political organization background, but as well very corporate, and now for the last 6 months, I'm working for Zengate Global, and I'm not at all regretting to be in this new industry, vibrant, at least new industry for me.
Hey everyone, and hello everyone that is watching online. My name is Osa, and I'm working for the IOTA Foundation as a project manager. And my work is focused on the implementation of the TWIN initiative, which is short for Trade Worldwide Information Network. And that's a digital infrastructure based on DLT that IOTA is driving and developing a coordination with other organizations, including the World Economic Forum and Trademark Africa. And I'm really excited to talk about how this digital infrastructure is working to enhance sustainability and transparency in the supply chains in the panel.
Andre had a great intro keynote for us regarding this topic. Now for the first question, how do you see the current state of transparency in supply chain systems? Who wants to go first?
Well, I can talk about so one thing that I would talk about is the fragmentation when it comes to data sharing, because since this twin infrastructure is trying to help and gap all these gaps or bridge all the gaps of data sharing in the international supply chain, I think that's what I'm most paying attention to. But it's really, really fragmented. So if you think about when you're exporting something, let's say you're exporting flowers from Kenya to Europe, you have so many different actors that need to share data with each other, and there's no harmonious way of doing this. I mean, each organization might have very advanced and nice IT systems internally, but when it comes to sharing the data, it's not smooth at all. And I mean, you might have something like 220 separate data exchanges in that kind of export process. And imagine if all these actors are then sharing data in a way that is fragmented, that like with every exchange point, you have risk for delays, risk for errors, risk for fraud even. Imagine how complex this problem is when you think about thousands of shipments. And I mean, of course, the lack of visibility, the lack of, I mean, this data silos in the supply chain is, I think it's one of the biggest risks to transparency in the supply chain, because if you don't have connection, if you don't have interoperability, you don't have visibility, how can you then have transparency?
Anybody wants to add anything?
Yes, I want to piggyback on the point of fragmented information systems. So why I entered the blockchain space was, or why I hope blockchain was the solution to this problem, that as an intern, I had the task of like pulling internal data from our database, put it in an Excel sheet, and then send it via email to our partner. And I was wondering, so was quite strange for me. And what the challenge of transparency in global supply chains is that companies need to share their information, of course, but this is at the expense of the privacy. Companies are afraid if they open the systems that other information could be leaked. So this is this tension which we are having, which is preventing from global supply chain transparency to happen.
From our perspective, it's an issue of standards. And the general standard that we have encountered in the corporate world is obviously you don't promote your solution because it's blockchain. You promote your solution because it solves a problem, but it has to be on blockchain because blockchain implies accountability. Once you have information on blockchain, you know it cannot be changed. So if you're putting false information on blockchain, you are accountable for that. And let's take the case of Danone. So, of course, Danone doesn't want to share all of its corporate information. That's why they extract invoice number, date of invoice, the type of plastic that's been collected, the quantity, and the destination of that plastic. Those 5 data points are the ones that are reflected on an NFT. Now, of course, if you're lying, then a journalist, a stakeholder, a judge, anybody will go after you and say, look, you have said that this is wrong information. So ultimately, the concept of blockchain is creating accountability in information. And the global standard that we are encountering, even at the plastics level, you have international treaties on plastics that are coming into play. The plastic credit market is starting to become very mature. Is ultimately that the information has to be on blockchain because once it's there, it cannot be altered. So at that point, that's the key standard to be able to create a uniform approach. Obviously, verification is key to putting that. But this is what we're seeing, that it's a must-to-have, but it's not the core feature.
Amazing. Yeah, as the supply chain systems grow more complex, new challenges will emerge. For example, making sure of an ethical source, reducing environmental harms and fraudulent activities. But if we want to mention the main sustainability challenges in the global supply chain, what can we say and how can blockchain help?
Well, the concept of blockchain ultimately is enabling everyone to see verified data points, and I underline verified, according to each different entity along that chain. So I'll go to be very simple in my world, in the world of waste management, it's the recovery company, making sure that the recovery company is legitimate, there are no criminal records, the company is solvent, extract that data and put it in NFT format. The recycler, same thing. The manufacturer, same thing. You take these 3 different entities, and if they are publicly on the blockchain where their information is published, at that point, you know that you have a secured, verified chain of data that you can build upon. What does that mean? Well, if you want to raise money, donations to help, you need to make sure that the money that you're putting is actually going to end up where it's supposed to end up. So the first thing you want to know is that the plastic credit eventually is true information, it guarantees that the waste was collected, and it is meant for a specific activity. That's how the blockchain actually helps. The accountability, I cannot stress more the concept of accountability than anything else. Because once the information is there, you make sure that you have put the right information there. If not, there are consequences to your brand, criminal consequences. There are consequences over the place. And that's the real role that blockchain has across the supply chain.
Maybe if I can add as well, I don't know how familiar you are with Maersk, that shipping company, but they used to partner in 2018 with IBM. They wanted this to use it as blockchain supply chain. It didn't work out because not every partners were doing the same thing. But they were a bit stubborn and they continued. Now they're working with the Singaporean government and they're tackling a problem that blockchain doesn't occur at first, but it's paperless. So using blockchain as well in a sustainable manner doesn't allow that we don't use paper. So these are another example of blockchain technology, how it can be useful.
Amazing.
Yes, one point maybe I want to add from the agricultural perspective is the lack of finance. So to transform, farmers have the issue, there are more sustainable farming practices available already. But the time of transition usually takes around 3 to 5 years, in which the farmers have to invest in new machinery, invest in new types of seeds, and also bear the risk that of lower income. So what I hope blockchain could also provide, or Web3, alternative funding mechanisms. We talked about the coordination layer, about public goods funding, right? That new sources of funding could be made available to finance that sustainable transition of the farmers.
What I'd like to mention is something I'm also very proud of. It's very recent, and this only could happen because of blockchain. So we have signed a joint venture with a German company called IOTA to certify the information that plastics verifies to create carbon credits related to plastic removal. Who is familiar with carbon credits? Please raise your hand. Perfect. So you probably all be familiar that they are either from sequestration, forestation, renewals. Well, now the new carbon credit that can be born is from actual plastic removal. And the actual plastic removal can only be used as a carbon credit when it has been actually verified. And how are you going to verify something so tangible across the recovery and recycling? Well, with the blockchain, you are making sure that the data is accruing up to the point of the manufacturer. When the manufacturer, in this case Danone, I'm picking on them, says, okay, I'm using recovered plastic, so I'm creating a carbon credit because I'm not creating new plastic. I'm not using PET, I'm using rPET. Carbon credit is created. Well, you can only use a carbon credit if you verify the entire recovery process, and of course a third party has certified this process. Now, if blockchain did not exist, it would be just a big registry, a big table, and you have to take my word for it. So the new business models, the new financing models are born out of, obviously, the need in the industry, but because of the core technology, which is accountability and the immutability, the concept of not being able to change that information. And that's directly from blockchain.
Indeed, the blockchain technology can pave the path towards a more sustainable and transparent value creation system. My next question is from Valerie. Can you please explain a little more about the EUDR, or the European Union Deforestation Regulation, and how blockchain can contribute to this regulation?
With pleasure. So, as I introduced myself, I used to work 20 years ago for the European Commission. I like to see that what we struggled at that time at the EU level, we still struggle right now, is how to communicate regulations, even regulations that are really in the are going to be profitable to consumers, to the EU citizens, as the EUDR is, and as well for the environment. So the EUDR is basically going to come into play in 2026, and it's going to force producers, importers to the EU on 7 commodities to be able to prove that they have not touched their deforestation free. And these 7 commodities, I always forget one of them, so let's see which one I'm going to forget this time. But it goes to soy, palm oil, wood, there is as well coffee, cocoa, and there's another one. I'm like the EU. Sometimes I'm sure of what I'm going to struggle with. So at Zengate Global, we're doing a double activity. We're already informing producers from the rest of the world that this regulation is coming into play. And with our technology, Palmyra Pro, the blockchain technology, we're helping them to respect this new regulation. And this regulation, in a nutshell, requires three things. Geolocation, which makes sense for the deforestation. The other one, file record. Well done, blockchain, that you're the best for that, because it's, like Andre was saying, you cannot change the data. And the other one as well is anti-tamper tools. So this is another one that we can use for IoT, but I don't like to use that kind of vocabulary. No, I don't. So the smart tools, so smart anti-tamper tools, objects that you can put on drums. And this is what we're starting to implement. It's not concerning the EUDR directly, but honey, which is one of the most adulterated commodity in the world, with our project in Zambia.
Perfect. You want to add something? Oh, okay. I thought you want to add something. It's okay. Good. My next question is from Osa. So IOTA's technology has been used as an infrastructure to increase sustainability and transparency in global supply chains. Now, I want to ask you, based on the experiences that IOTA has in cross-border collaborations, what are the lessons learned?
Yeah, so I mean, I think we have really seen how powerful it can be when you bring everyone together in a digital environment where you can share data. So I'm going to talk about an example because I always think it's easier if you talk about the real world example. So with this twin infrastructure, one of the key use cases is the TLIP, Trade and Logistics Information Pipeline, which is basically the application of twin infrastructure in Kenya. I mean, in the context of Kenyan cross-border processes. And we did a pilot ecosystem of trust with the UK government a few years ago, where we really had this in an end-to-end supply chain where every actor could come together and share the data via twin. So instead of getting all these paper documents, I don't know, printing them, sending them via email, PDFs, rekeying information into different systems to then send it again to another system. It was connected all through this TLIP, which actually fetched the data points directly from the Kenyan government systems that omit the data that is required in cross-border processes. And here I'm talking about export declarations, health certificates that came as raw data points via API integrations and could be shared directly to everyone. I mean, to whoever needed it. I mean, freight forwarders, the customs authorities, the border agencies in the UK. I mean, it's important to clarify that, of course, all these actors didn't share all the information with everyone. That's why you also work with data points, because, I mean, if you have a PDF of the commercial invoice, I mean, you just share the whole PDF. You can't select what to share and what not. You can also do this with blockchain. You can set permissions so that the owner of the data chooses who should see what information, and it's just shared as raw data points via API integrations. So when we did this in these pilots, I think the most revolutionary benefit we saw was how fast the UK border agencies could actually view the data that they needed to review to let the goods pass across the border. So let me tell you that usually they wouldn't have access to this information until the goods actually arrive at the border. And then what do they need to do? They need to check all these documents. And I'm telling you that a truck, for example, could have as much as 850 documents. If they need to check all these documents to make sure that the goods that are passing into the country are compliant, imagine how long these trucks need to stand there, all the emissions with ships as well that need to stay lined up. Even, I mean, when it's perishables, the goods could actually spoil because of the delays that could happen if something is missing. And in the case of using TLIP, we did manage to get all this data to the border agencies within 5 minutes. I mean, literally almost immediately after all this data was originated in the Kenyan government systems. And imagine how much time that gives them to plan in advance, to just check everything is compliant. When the goods are at the border, you just use an identifier. It could be maybe the UCR number, which is using Kenyan export processes. And yeah, boom, the transport is there. I mean, the goods pass the border. You don't need to spend time risking all the spoilage and emissions omitted when vessels are waiting. So yeah, I think this is one really nice use case because we really saw very clear these benefits. I mean, 5 minutes of getting the data in comparison to 3 weeks, which it takes when the goods are on the ship, or 8 hours with a flight.
Thank you for sharing the insights. My next question is from Toy. You mentioned that your research is mostly focused on food supply chain. Can you please share more details about it and tell us how exactly is blockchain contributing in this area?
Sure. So this is based on the research we did for our Trusty Food project. So we're trying to understand, especially asking stakeholders who have experience with blockchain technology, how do they think blockchain will transform food supply chains towards more sustainability? And we came to the conclusion that there are three main scenarios. So one is about creating more transparency, efficiency, and resilience. Right. So the main benefits are usually big corporates who want to have a better overview of their supply chains, want to optimize the processes, and create more revenue by that. The second one is driven by governments. We had the topic of EUDR, right? That we have new regulations coming which force companies to create more traceability, transparency on the food supply chains to prove, for example, that the coffee is deforestation free. The first scenario is about empowering smaller local communities. For example, that small farmers have better access to finance, and also they can make decisions for more, which are more accurate, more needed for their local needs. So this is the three scenarios we have identified so far by asking the stakeholders.
Perfect. One of the issues that we have as we're moving towards the mass adoption of the blockchain in different industries is patchwork regulations. So we need to come to some unified regulations that is going to be used across different industries so that we can move forward towards the adoption. But for my next question, I'm asking all of you, you can share your ideas. What regulation or policy do we have to change so that we can make this adoption happen faster as an accelerator?
So I'm very passionate about this topic, how to make. From my experience, so we also had another project about blockchain and customs, and we talked about how difficult it is sometimes to convince, especially governments, also to, as the final end users, right, to be open to new innovative solutions such as Web3. And in the blockchain world, so we say, yeah, this is a public network, right? All the data is visible, but while building such applications, usually companies do not want to immediately launch their beta version on a public mainnet. So in the blockchain development world, we have this notion of test network, where we can test out new ideas. And I would love to see more, more innovative, friendly environments so that more stakeholders can come together. For example, also the end users from the government. Also, for example, also the farmers, that they are included, because in the past, the blockchain applications were mainly driven by the technology providers, right? Which are sometimes a little bit detached from the farmer realities. So why not come together, test it out, and build something together? Yeah, this is what I would like to see.
Amazing. Yeah.
Thank you. I would like to invite everybody to do the intellectual exercise of replacing the word blockchain with accountability. And as a global standard, basically, you want every company, every institution to be accountable. The accountability factor is what precisely blockchain provides. Danone wanted to work with us because they had a blockchain requirement. Bayer, Leverkusen, blockchain requirement. Barça, blockchain requirement. And they're all blockchain requirements, but it's not because they're obsessed with blockchain or even to the point that they understand what blockchain is it because for them, it's if the information is on blockchain, I'm accountable for it. It's not going to be changed anymore. So as a general regulatory environment, you have to be accountable for the data that you are putting. where. That's the general standard that should be there. And then, of course, from a regulatory point of view, it's important to bring it down to very basic level. What am I buying when I'm buying a plastic credit? Well, I'm buying a proof that the waste was sold, shipped, and delivered. So all standards and regulatory environments have to say that if you're going to create a blockchain information, it has to reflect sell, shipment, and delivery. That's a standard, very general standard. And ultimately, governments regulate or trying to regulate around these factors. And then from there, you can build all sorts of different formulas and all sorts of different recipes. But having a standardized building block around accountability, around the methodology of how you are going to put that information on chain is what I see happening, and I see much necessary, much needed.
Yeah. There are some skeptics in the market who think that or claim that using blockchain in different industries such as supply chain is going to add more complexities instead of making everything more efficient. Now, I'm going to ask Åsa, what do you think about that? Do you agree?
No, okay, so I want to say that this is something that I hear a lot. It's something that I encounter very often, that blockchain is very complex, and how can we make government agencies use that, etc. And I think it's very important to not just treat blockchain as a big whole. We need to really see, okay, so what kind of blockchain implementation are we talking about? So for example, with Twin, honestly, it couldn't be easier. Like, you don't even need to change your systems. The pilots that I talked about, we did between Kenya and the UK for these flour, coffee, tea export processes. No one had to really change their systems. We plug into them as with API integrations. We fetch the data from there, so they don't even have to know what's going on in the background. I mean, yeah, of course, like, we need to set up the API integrations, etc. But I don't think that's more complicated than rekeying constantly information into systems, risking that something goes wrong, that there's errors. And I mean, when the errors happen, follow up with where it went wrong, which you definitely have a big black box where you need to figure out where things went wrong. So, no, I mean, I think it really depends on how the blockchain is implemented. In our case, we connect with legacy systems, so it's not more complex. You just use your same systems, but you have access to more data, which is coming in through blockchain, through API integrations from all the different stakeholders you need to get the data from to be able to do risk analysis, for example, before the goods reach the border. So I think that's an important point to make.
Indeed. Yeah.
Thank you. In my personal experience, in my 54 years of existence, I have many times pushed the wrong button on the browser, and instead of seeing a website, I see the source code. Obviously, it's immediately go back to the browser mode and not look at the source code. So a dashboard that is Web2 friendly is the only experience that we have encountered the corporates want to see and the stakeholders want to see. Now, they want to know that there's blockchain. If they click and they can see the representative information on blockchain, that's checking the box, but it's not the focus. The focus is addressing the Web2 mindset that we have, the user-friendly mindset that we have, and not putting the blockchain as in the forefront of that information. And so working very much on these Web2 interfaces was a way for us to break into the corporate world.
Thank you for sharing the details. Now, Valerie told us about the European Union deforestation regulation. Now, I want to get a little deeper into a more customized, detailed example. And I'm going to ask Toy, if, for example, coffee farmers who want to use blockchain-based use cases, blockchain solutions for their EUDR compliance, are they going to face any challenges, or is it going to be easy for them?
Yes, so this is now from the project Forest Guard, which, of course, we are talking about the future of sustainable supply chains, but we also need to look at what is happening today, right, to avoid the potholes on our way to sustainability. So the challenges farmers have regarding blockchain-based solutions to comply with EUDR is, I think, what Andre is always mentioning about how do we ensure that the data originating from the source is correct. And for example, for the EUDR, it is required that farmers need to prove they are the owner of this land. But the fact is that many of the farmers do not even have such a certificate. It's just like, it has been in the hands of this family for 5 generations, but the EUDR is asking for, we need some kind of proof, but it's non-existent. So, and we also talked about the complexity of blockchain solutions, right? We always say it's really better to not overwhelm farmers with such technical details, and if we ask them to have a wallet or pay attention to the seed phrase and also just putting in the data, that is also a huge challenge. Farmers are usually also organized in cooperatives. So, and these cooperatives are sometimes responsible for like inputting the data and so on and so forth. So the challenge about how to make it practical for the farmers, so they are overburdened with more technical and regulatory challenges. But, and coming back to my point I said earlier, we need better financing solutions. Also, we need to reward these farmers for their additional effort, which is not happening at the moment. So I hope blockchain can, or not blockchain, but Web3 or new solutions, can help.
Just to add a few little things, what we do with Zambia so it's not really particularly to the EUDR, but with the honey is that firstly, they get the benefits in US dollars. The other thing is as well, they work in co-ops. So that has been as well a solution of, and the way we did our platform is extremely easy. They can put all the data by the phone. The only thing is, of course, this is humans putting data into the system. We do have a business analyst as well who's double checking. So we do have, not everything is perfect. Sometimes there are like doubles of same numbers of identity of beehives, and we need to double check it. So blockchain technology is not going to be the magical solution for everything. There will be still human error. Some are, just because it's just in our case, it's 30,000 hives. So of course there's going to be some mistakes, but as well, the receptor needs to be as well double checking what is the data, if there's any doubles, etc. And we cannot ask farmers to do so. And at Zengate, we found this solution.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing all the insights. Now let's see if anyone from the audience has a question. Yeah, lady here.
Well, thank you very much. My question is for the plastics company. So can you just describe a journey how a waste management company, or if it is possible, the government, because for example in Armenia, municipalities are taking care of the waste management, can, like here on the chain, can create an NFT and be certified, etc. And the follow-up question, what will be the incentive for them, except the ones that you mentioned?
Thank you. Good question. So from a business point of view, basically, we charge 2,500 euros one-time fee. Thank you. We charge a 2,500 euro one-time fee to onboard the entity. Government, Danone, or small recycling company in Peru, for example, or in Dominican Republic. 30 days for auditing, doing criminal background checks, solvency checks, the standard procedure of how an audit is conducted traditionally. And then once that's done, onboarded, you create the dashboard on the blockchain, but you don't know it's the blockchain. It's a standard Web 2 dashboard. And 5,000 euros a year, we verify 2,000 tons worth of recovery of waste. We've actually expanded to generate revenues, more revenues, not only plastics, but carton, aluminum, glass in Dominican Republic, etc. And what does that mean? Well, you upload on the platform basically your invoices, your proof of payments, your way bills, your logistics information. We use, manual and AI tools to verify this data. Because at the end of the day, what we do is, that's the business opportunity out there for Web3 community or for even companies. You have to certify and verify the data. So you have to guarantee that the information you're putting there is true. And that's built in trust over time. So this information is uploaded, and then these NFTs, these digital certificates, are created. At that point, in the case of Danone, they're used not only to have verified claims that they are collecting their bottles, that they're recycling them, but also to position them, in this case, incentive number 2, for plastic tax deduction. Because in Spain, you have a plastic tax. You have to pay a tax on the amount of virgin plastic that you're creating. So at this point, you want to be able to say, no, I want to pay less taxes. Number 3, carbon credits. You want to generate carbon credits for your own use, in the case of Danone. In the case of waste recovery companies, you want to be able to create carbon credits to be able to sell them in the voluntary carbon credit market, a new source of income. In the case of plastic credits, you need to find financing to be able to finance the purchase of machineries. I heard earlier in Montenegro a bus, electric bus, or some infrastructure. Well, that is the way to finance this instrument, or the financing instrument is the plastic credit. So you are generating money for the municipality through the verification. You're generating carbon credits for the municipality. You're generating the ability to have full transparency and accountability. These are all the different economic drivers behind verifying that you are collecting the waste and you're recycling it. So these are the different tools. But honestly, I mentioned the pricing because it took 6 years to be very standardized in the approach, in the methodology, in the use of the technology, and have a very regulated approach towards onboarding entities.
We have time for one more question. Yeah?
So how do your customers worry about the data in terms of where it's stored, or do they freely give up the data and they don't really worry about that part? And what kind of tools do you guys use currently for the data?
Thank you. So in terms of the actual tools, I wouldn't be able to get technically back to you on that, but I can tell you that the invoice, which is obviously very confidential information, how much money you made, to whom you sold it, etc. You obviously don't want that to be public. So that stays on our centralized database, and that's secured. How is it secured? I don't have that knowledge to answer, at least publicly. What I can tell you is that the extracted data, the invoice number, the date of invoice, the type, quantity, and destination, that's in an NFT. That's an NFT. We've used the NFT basically as the public data point so that people know effectively that if X amount of plastic was collected and recycled, there is documentation out there with exact information that you can go and chase and track and hold accountable the person that issued that. That's how we separate the data in every single country.
Did you say something?
Same question.
Same question for the rest, I guess.
Okay.
Could you repeat that one more time?
Do your customers ever question you about data and how it's stored, and is it stored in a compliant, secure way, and what kind of tools are you reassuring them with that you're using? Does that make sense?
So the question was how to ensure that the data is secure, which is coming in.
In general, I'm asking you, do they generally ask you about how the data is stored? Because there's a private information there.
Exactly. So yes, we have to be very careful about what data is put on the blockchain, and blockchain also is not very good at. So it is a database, but we also need to be aware that it's a database which is not good at storing large amounts of data. So we need to think about, okay, what is essential to put on the data, right? To put on the blockchain, and to ensure whether the data is correct. So for the cooperatives and the farmers, of course, we need then to rely on the cooperatives to ensure that the data input is correct. So this is a little bit different from blockchain in crypto, that we say we do not need an intermediary, but as we say in supply chains, the blockchain is connected to the physical system, and we also need to find mechanisms to ensure that the data from outside is correct. Also, another point to ensure how data is correct, for example, for the EUDR, it's also necessary to put, of course, the coordinates of the field of the farmers. how do we ensure that this data is correct? Because sometimes the data is old, or there are several sources which we can pull the data from, which is sometimes contradicting one another. So we need new methodologies, new analysis tools to ensure that this data from outside is correct. And how do we do this with plot farmer data? We use satellite data from multiple sources, right? And so we can guarantee, we cannot ensure 100% it's correct, but we at least can reduce the risk of error if we use multiple sources to ensure that the data is correct.
Perfect. Thank you for the questions, and thank you for the information that you shared. As we close this discussion, one thing is clear, and that is transparency is not a luxury, it's a necessity. Blockchain technology can be a great solution for the long-lasting issues that we have in the supply chain area, but technology is not enough. What we need is collaborations, what we need is shared standards, and the will to implement these changes. So let this insight be the call to action for us to prioritize sustainability in everything that we do and in every section of the supply chain. Together we can create a system which will not only create value, but will also be sustainable and transparent. Thank you for your attention.
Many thanks for the great panel.